I'm getting ready to start another custom bike build that I'm going to show you in this video. It's one of the most unique mountain bikes that I've ever built. So many months ago, I was given a Lee Cougan Rampage Innova frame to build for this project, and it has been sitting in my garage for quite a while I've got the parts in. I had to get some bikes out of my garage. I had to finish a few more bike builds, and now I am set to build this. So what I'm gonna do in this video is talk about the frame, and then at the end of the video, I'll show you what it all looks like. So the Lee Cougan Rampage Innova is a soft tail that has 30 millimeters of travel. You can see it's got a bumper here. It has no pivots. So it's got flexible seat stays, flexible chain stays, and it is also a UDH compatible mountain bike, by the way, which is really cool. Now, I'm not going to be using SRAM transmission. I'll show you what I'm going to be using for this. I'm going to keep this fairly simple, fairly straightforward, but this is a beautiful frame. I don't know if you can see in the video how good this paint job is, but it looks so good. Let me take a step back here. This frame with the rear axle and the seat post collar, it also comes with a headset, is 3.5 pounds. And I can tell you, just by holding this thing, it is super light. So Lee Cougan bikes are designed in Italy. This is a carbon frame. The carbon is built in Italy. Lee Cougan bikes have been raced to many wins by the Soudal Lee Cougan team. And this is a race-ready frame that's going to be an absolute blast to ride because of how light this thing's gonna be. I'm gonna show you the components that we'll be doing for this build. I'll start by showing the wheels, and I'm actually jumping forward in time from shooting this video and the scenes that are coming later because I made a change on the wheels. Originally, I was gonna use the Stan's Podium wheels, but I'm actually gonna use those wheels on another bike. So I got a brand new set of Stan's Crest wheels, and I'm actually really excited about trying this. It's been a while since I've tried a cross-country alloy wheel from Stan's. Years ago, I tried one I didn't like. It was too flexy, but they've really changed the build. They've made the rims wider and deeper. And so again, I'm looking forward to trying these. Currently right now, this is Stan's top-of-the-line cross-country wheel set. They don't make a carbon wheel as of today. Hopefully they will do that in the future, but the Podium wheels are not putting out right now. So I was really impressed with the pair of Stan's Arch alloy wheels that I got recently on another bike. The ride quality was excellent. So again, I'm looking forward to trying these. So for the tires, I'm going to use on the front a Recon Race, and then on the back I'm going to use a Maxxis Icon. Now you'll see I already have the cassette on this bike. It's a Shimano XT cassette. So I'm going to go with full XT mechanical for this bike. It's light, it works really well. I've used it a ton. Really like Shimano XT mechanical. So now I'm going to show you the individual components. We're going to go back in time and I'll show you all the individual components that will go on this bike. I'm going to be using a Niner RDO carbon seat post. I actually had this seat post in my garage for quite a while for another project that I never used. So perfect application, it fits this bike. WTB Silverado saddle, no surprise there if you've watched my channel for a while. So I got the whole build kit, Shimano build kit, all XT. It comes with a stem. I'm actually going to get a shorter stem. This one's a bit too long for me. I ordered one, I think it's an 80 that I'm going to get. This one I believe is 100. I like running shorter stems because of the trails that I ride a lot. They're really tight and twisty. By the way, I did have to get some adapters for the brakes. The frame has closer spaced eyelets for the bolts, more like a gravel bike brake, but we had to get this adapter. Now I'll talk about the fork that I'm going to use for this bike. I had to call an audible on the fork, and if you're not familiar with American football and that phrase, it just means I had to change my plans at the last minute. So here's the deal, is Öhlins had sent me the new RXC fork, which is a 34 millimeter stanchion fork. It can be 100 or 120 millimeters of travel, carbon steerer tube, it's light. Super stoked about riding that fork, and I've not ridden it yet. And I had it set aside for like a couple months for this project. However, when I started the build a few days ago, I realized that the headset for this bike has a stop. And so there's a little metal piece in the bottom cup. And so it's not a standard crown race. So the crown race, I don't know if you can see it in the video, has these shoulders on it to hit that stop. That way your bars cannot spin past a certain angle. They cannot hit the frame and damage the frame, which is kind of nice. However, it's not a standard crown race. So I did not want to put the crown race on the new RXC fork because I was only going to use it for a couple months and then put on the RXF, which is the one I'm holding here. And I did not want to take the crown race off. So you can scratch the fork, you can damage the crown race, and I only had one crown race and I just didn't want to do that. So here's the deal, is the RXF is going to go on this bike now. It is 120 millimeters of travel. This bike is made for 100, and I was going to ride it at 100. However, I probably would have ended up at 120. I just like a longer travel fork. So because this bike has a lot less travel in the rear, having a 120 fork is probably a pretty good idea. So that's a really long-winded explanation as to why the RXF is going to go on this bike. And it's just a little bit heavier than the RXC, but no big deal. Now I'm going to finish the build and I'll show you the whole bike when it's done. The build is done and this bike looks great. It is such a unique looking bike. I'm really looking forward to riding it and letting you know what it's like, because I looked on YouTube and there's not a lot of information out there about this bike. Most of the videos that I found are in Italian. So I'm one of the first Americans to really test and review this bike, which I'm really stoked about. You know, the cool thing about this bike is how light you can make it. So currently as it sits without pedals, it's 23.96 pounds. And it's not a very expensive build kit. Like, I didn't break the bank with this build kit. Shimano XT mechanical, Stan's Crest wheels. The Öhlins fork is not super light. It's not the RXC fork, which that one is lighter than the RXF that's on this bike. So if you wanted to make this bike like sub 23, maybe even sub 22 with just a wheel swap, maybe a carbon handlebar and a lighter fork, you could do that. And so you can make this bike really light. So normally in my first look videos, I'll kind of go over all the components that are on the bike. I've basically done that already, so I'm not gonna rehash all of that. I'll just show the bike up close and I'll talk about a couple things about the build. I love glossy finishes, and the white and the blue I think just look amazing. You can see what it looks like all put together with the Shimano XT. The Öhlins fork I think looks really good on this bike. I'll talk about the stem and the bars here in a minute. I didn't mention when I talked about the Stan's Crest that they are the MK4s, which come with the impulse hubs. That's the same hub that I have on my Stan's Podiums, which I have still in my garage. I'm using them as an experiment on another bike. I might put those on this bike, which would drop, I could drop another pound if I put the Podiums in a different tire combination, because the impulse hub is really easy to change out. The Stan's Podiums currently have an XD driver for a SRAM cassette, so I can change out the free hub and I can put the Podiums on this bike if I want to. So I may do that in the future. Niner RDO seat post. So let me talk about the headset. It's the only slight negative I can say about this bike, building it up. Other than that, the build was super straightforward. It is a press fit bottom bracket, but the build was really easy. Other than the headset, it's just a little bit more complicated than a traditional headset. The main downside is I couldn't run the stem that I had actually purchased for this bike. I forgot that you kind of have to use their stem because of this little plastic piece and the way the cables go inside of it. So the cables run through the headset, but after it's built up, it's really clean. So all the cables are completely internal until you come out the back. So, you know, it is mechanical, so you got a derailleur cable coming out the back and the brake cable coming out the back. So, you know, like I said, it's a little bit harder to build, but once it's put together, it's nice and clean. But the only downside is I couldn't run my stem. I bought a 40 mil stem. This is an 80. Came with 100. I was able to get an 80. And then, you know, because of this plastic piece and the cable management system, I had to run this particular stem. And then I actually got another bar. It was a 35 millimeter clamp, and this is a, I think it's a 31/8. And I couldn't run the bar that I got. It was a really nice carbon bar. So I ended up picking up this bar. It's an alloy flatter bar. It's got a little bit of a rise to it, but you know, to me, you know, having a proprietary type system just means you can't run all the components that you want. I would rather have at least a 60, maybe even a 50 or 40 millimeter stem on this bike. I think it would improve the handling on really tight trails. Other than that, the build was straightforward, and I'm really looking forward to getting out on the trails and riding this very, very unique bike. So after I get some rides in on this bike, I'll report back on what it's like. So stay tuned to the channel for that. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so for more bike reviews, gear reviews, bike maintenance, and ride videos. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.